Hello everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our 5e Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign recap. When we last left off, our group of dubious heroes, including Thaddeus, the gnome druid, Atticus, the human artificer, Nexel, the hag-born sorcerer, and Pietor, the human monk rogue, had successfully retrieved Essence of Night from defeating the vampire, the sexy vampire lady Elmira. And now they were going to head across the city and they were going to try to hook back up with these dark creepers that they had met and helped out in the city before, in the hopes that they would be taken to their leader, Søren, who supposedly has lots of secret information about where things are in the city, since divination magic can't do the job. So our heroes were up here, sort of near the Drakkenheim city garrison, and they wanted to get down here to where they had last run into the dark creepers. And so they were traveling through the city and were using the system from the rules for random encounters and stuff, but I threw a little bit of a monkey wrench at them, because what I'm doing in my version of the city that isn't necessarily in the core rules, that I'm getting more from the Shadowfell books, and also just in general from video games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring and so forth. As you travel through the different wards of the city, in the original book, everything is basically the same. Things are more dangerous in the inner city, but there's really sort of a consistency about how the city looks and feels. And I definitely was not going to settle for that. If this was a video game, if this was Bloodborne, as you go to different wards of the city, they're going to try to not use the same digital assets for area after area after area. They don't want it to feel samey. They don't want it to feel like one big undifferentiated gray mass. So what I did is I took from Gloomrot, and I took from some other sources, and I just started coming up with different areas of the city that I wanted to be haunted and feel different, and kind of describe them differently to the players. And I even decided it's not necessarily that every time you go into the South Ward it's the same. You can be out here in the spokes and reach the area where the dark creepers were. Then you go back, and it was just sort of the default look before, but now all of a sudden it's a different set of skins, you would call it in a video game, where you're using different assets to fill it out. The streets are the same, but things feel or look different. So I had done the Ash Quarter from Gloomrot here, where everywhere you went there was this layer of dust that was constantly filling itself in. It wasn't falling from the sky, it was just everything was constantly covered in dust. And I had done similar things. I had done sort of a cathedral ward thing up here, where all the keepers of the city were walking around. They were acolytes and monks and penitents. And I had been doing this sort of thing. So the party decides they want to try to get back over here to the dark creepers, and I pulled out what I call the Streets of Slaughter, which was very sort of a Diablo 2 kind of, just blood everywhere, piles of dismembered bodies everywhere, crucified adventurers lining the street, the fountains are running with blood, there's flies and crows everywhere. And I kind of separate these, because I'm a Ravenloft fanatic, I kind of separate these with walls of mist, right? So they come through this octarine mist, and all of a sudden they're in the Streets of Slaughter. And of course, the other thing I've done, I shouldn't say of course, but it wouldn't be your old pal the Henchman, if I hadn't also created custom encounters to go with each different ward of the city that I've created, each different way that the city can be haunted. So I had special encounters just for the Streets of Slaughter that they were going to encounter, but they did not, in fact, encounter them. So they didn't roll a random encounter, And so they get in here and they're talking to the they finally, I described this whole scene where they're walking up to Soren and they're getting ready to talk to him, and he's in this cave and there are these weird phosphorescent mushrooms that are providing the light, and all the dark creepers are gathered around looking from under their hoods. Everybody in the party started calling them Jawas, which totally undercuts the dark fantasy theme I'm going for, but what are you gonna do, and so they finally meet Soren. He's on this throne of bones and everything else. And, of course, Nexel has the best charisma of anybody. So all the players give Nexel the essence of night, which I decided was in like the Ghostbusters trap kind of thing. Had a little wire running back to Atticus. He comes forward with the essence of night, and he's getting ready to talk. And I'm like, hey, just a DM question. Have your characters talked about what you're going to ask Soren? Because it's not obvious at this point what the party's main goals are. They've got two different sets of artifacts. They've got the Seals of Drakkenheim, and they've got the relics of St. Vitruvio. And are they going to side with one faction and go after the seal? Are they going to kind of break off on their own and go after the artifacts? And then Atticus has his own personal quest to try to become the master artificer of delirium and meteoric iron. And on top of all of this, so here's a big reveal. Pietor's player from the beginning was talking to me about maybe his sister is missing in Drakkenheim. So when you first create your characters in the Dungeons of Drakkenheim, you choose a quest. That's your quest. And Pietor's character wanted to secretly pick that his quest was missing family member and not tell the rest of the party. And I said, well, when you guys meet with Soren, this would be an excellent time for you to be like, hey, do you know if my sister is still alive? Blah, blah, blah. So the players kind of freeze-framed the actual interaction with Soren and the Dark Creepers and talked among themselves for a few minutes. What are we doing? What's our goal? What do we want to do next? And Pietor's character had to reveal this whole thing about his sister. And so after a little bit of conversation and a vote, they decided the visions that Nexel has been getting, they think these are legit. They think that Sylvia, the girl who's been giving him these visions, and told him that he needs to collect the relics of St. Vitruvio, they feel like that's the real deal. They don't really feel like they can trust any of the factions the way they can believe in her sort of apocalyptic vision. So he asks Soren about the artifacts, and Soren tells him he knows there are 5 artifacts, relics of St. Vitruvio. We know where the Scepter of St. Vitruvio is. The Knights of the Silver Order have it. And he's pretty sure that the Helm of Patron Saints is in the catacombs of the chapel of St. Selena's Monastery. And one of my players, I guess, had listened to the live stream of Dungeons of Drakkenheim, which I've never even listened to, but he recognized that name immediately. St. Selena's Monastery is the headquarters of the Followers of the Fallen Fire. They control Champion's Gate up here. They're the only ones who have regular access to the crater where the big delirium heart hit the city, and this is their sort of headquarters, this St. Selena's Monastery out here. And so they found out that one of these relics that they're looking for is there. And they're like, oh, well, that's just fabulous. We're probably not high enough level to head in there just yet. And so, Pietor asked about his sister, and because he made a really good persuade roll and kind of pulled at the heartstrings of Soren, he found out that she is in the Black Ivory Inn and that she's still alive. So then they were like, well, okay, is there anything else you can tell us? Do you know where any other artifacts are, anything like that? And he was like, well, I think I know for all of the Dark Creepers I did the whispery voice, but I think I did sort of the Russian accent for Soren. And he said, I am more of an information broker than an information give it away to anybody who happens to come by. So they're like, well, what can we bring you? What do you want in exchange for more information? And this is where I brought to the fore what I've been talking about. This is all completely off books, by the way, if you're following the book of Dungeons of Drakkenheim. This is all completely my own stuff. The dark folk, the darklings as I'm calling them, they were drawn into Drakkenheim by events at the Cosmological Clock Tower. Before the fall of the city, the artificers who were part of the Amethyst Academy built the Cosmological Clock Tower, and they were doing weird experiments there that had to do with the plane of shadow. When our artificer went in there, I even gave him a couple of spells from a separate supplement, 5e spells that he could use that are a little overpowered, that are shadow-based magic. And I was building up this whole thing that the artificers were interested in shadow-based magic. And Søren believes that if the Cosmological Clock Tower can be got working again, maybe they can be sent home to the Shadowfell, to Gloomrot, where they come from. And that's their main goal. He's like, hey, if you're working towards getting the Cosmological Clock Tower working, I'll do everything I can to help you guys. I'll give you all the information I can broker if you guys will promise to be helping us get home. So there was some talk about the Inscrutable Tower is probably where the stuff for the Cosmological Clock Tower is. They got a letter to that effect. So they bid farewell to Søren and his crew for now, and they decided on their way out they were going to search around and see if they could find some delirium. Well, when you're searching for delirium, everybody makes these search rolls, and if enough people get failures, not only do you not find delirium, but you get a random encounter. So that happened with the party. It was outside the Streets of Slaughter, so I didn't use my pre-planned encounter for the Streets of Slaughter. They were just in a nondescript part of the city, so I got to pull out this bad boy. I ordered this off of Etsy. It's a finger creeper from Elden Ring, and it's this detached hand with these necrotic looking fingers, and the party was basically in the ruins, and they were split up, and I had them each roll a d10, and the low man was Thaddeus, and so he's searching around in some rubble, and all of a sudden this thing pops out and decides it's going to fight him. So this is when Thaddeus's player decided he was going to go ahead and wreck my night. He had been planning to ambush me with this spell. It's called Conjure Animals, and it basically allowed him to conjure like 8 large constrictor snakes to defend him against the finger creeper. So I didn't even have that many Pathfinder bases to represent that. I have since gone into the recesses of my house and found all of the extra Pathfinder bases that I need and all the extra tokens that I'm going to need for all the things he can summon. Don't ambush your DM. I know my players were all like, oh, well, you're supposed to be the Dungeon Master. You're supposed to know the rules. This is just a spell that's in the rules. If you have a druid, you should read and watch YouTube videos, apparently, about every single power they can have and whether or not it's overpowered and how to plan for it and how to... Look, I'm busy enough just trying to figure out how the monsters work and what I'm adding to Drakkenheim. I'm definitely not up to speed on everything the players can do. So it would have been nice if he had warned me, but basically he summoned these constrictor snakes, but he was still really up close with the finger creeper. And I was using some stats for this thing from 5th edition Foes by Necromancer Games that really hit hard, because this thing gets 10 attacks per round. They all do pretty good damage. And that's basically its main abilities. It had a ton of hit points, and it gets a whole bunch of attacks per round. So we did not follow the rules. Thaddeus did not point out that the spell says you're supposed to roll initiative for these guys as a group. I just let them go as soon as they appeared. And so they all grappled and were holding on to this thing. They were wrapped, there were 6 snakes wrapped around its fingers and everything else. So it starts attacking Thaddeus to get him to drop the spell. So I think he might have wild shaped, but again, when I've got 10 finger smash attacks per round, I was able to double and triple up on him, where he was down pretty quick, and all of these monsters were de-conjured. I don't have anything against the spell. It's just we're gonna have to be ready for it, and I have to figure out how it fits into the game. So anyway, the party rushes over to help him. They got him back from 0 hit points, and they were able to take care of the finger creeper. And we talked before we were splitting up, because there's so much going on in the campaign now. And I'm like, where are you guys going next? They're like, we're going to go to the smithy on the Scar to check in with the dwarves, because Atticus wants to get more delirium and start crafting more cool delirium things. And then we're going to head to the Rose Theater to speak to the Iron Banshee, Ryan Graymere. We're gonna go to the Rose Theater, and we're gonna talk to the Iron Banshee and see what we're gonna go do next. And I just want you all to remember that that's what they told me to prep for next week, so you guys know what to expect. The party is going to the Rose Theater. They promised me, hey, listen, if you want to encourage us to keep making these, we could sure use a like, a subscribe. We love interacting with your comments. And we'll see you back next time on the Henchman's Memoirs.